or Cynthia, have you been able to join, or Rogelio?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. This is Cynthia.
Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. All right, Michael, that does give us quorum, and I think we can get things started.
Okay, great. It looks like we've got a full agenda. We've got two action items for board approval, 5 consent items also for board approval, 11 informational items. So we've got a full agenda, and I won't hold us up any further. So I'll go ahead and ask if there's any public comment on items not listed on the agenda. This would be the time.
Yeah, good morning. This is Kevin Aslan. I just put my comment into the chat. And the first comment is about replacement of skimmed benefits. On October 29, 2021, the DSS released ACL 21-133 about replacement of CalWorks and CalFresh benefits. The ACL requires that all beneficiaries complete an EBT 2259, report the crime to the EBT card in the county, EBT webpage in the county. And there are thousands of victims of this. And we're wondering, why didn't CalSOS automate ACL 21-133? And when will CalSOS automate ACL 21-133? That's the first issue that I put in there. The second issue is about aid paid pending and due process of law. In summary, for when a person files for a hearing, they're supposed to get aid paid pending until the judge stops the aid paid pending or the hearing is issued. That's happening in Medi-Cal, but it's not happening in CalWorks, CalFresh, RCA, CAPI, or any of the other programs, which is a violation of the state regulations. Aid paid pending, according to the regulations, is supposed to continue not for 1 month as CalSOS program today. And because of this blatant violation of due process of law, many families end up homeless and food insecure. And we're wondering, when would CalSOS correct this violation of due process of California beneficiaries of public social services beneficiaries? And that's my public comment. And I hope someday I will get an answer. I'm not sure how that works.
Thank you, Kevin. We will go ahead and follow up on those 2 items, and we respond to all public comments as a follow-up to the meeting. So thank you for your public comment. Any other public comments?
Hi, this is Jennifer Tracy from the CalSOS Advocates Group. We are speaking on behalf of the thousands of community-based organizations and assisters that assist customers in applying for and maintaining benefits. The CBO assisters are an integral part of the benefits ecosystem, especially for communities who are elderly, limited English proficiency, low technology, or face other barriers. This means that CBOs are representing the most vulnerable communities and the communities with the greatest barriers to accessing benefits. So far, CBOs make up about 20% of the applications submitted to Benefits Cal, including those that go through Get CalFresh. And we expect that more CBOs will be using Benefits Cal as the CalWIN migrations continue. However, we are raising our concerns now, a year after the launch of Benefits Cal, because of the increasing needs of consumers seeking access to benefits. Right now, the portal for CBOs offers extremely limited functionality for CBOs to support their consumers. They can only submit information, upload documents, and sometimes see case numbers, but they have to find workarounds to help their clients with anything else like renewals or changes or finding out what's going on with their case. As counties continue to migrate, CBOs with a read-only access in CalWIN will lose their main source of information for the status of client cases. Without access to this information, the CBOs will need to contact the already burdened county staff, who will now be asked to respond directly to CBO requests for information and field additional contacts from clients who can't get the information any other way. Furthermore, CBOs still do not have points of contact for tech support for Benefits Cal in the vast majority of counties, and there's no timeline that's been shared with us for the help desk to be available in LA County or the former C4 counties. We have 4 requests. Number one, add the option for CBOs to assist people with recertifications and renewals, reporting changes, and any other support that could be completed without the integrated release of information. Number two, ensure that the integrated release of information experiences no further delays and is integrated as soon as possible. Number three, if CalSON has plans to continue to direct CBO assisters to contact the county when they have tech issues, then we request that specific points of contact be provided for each county. And lastly, we need to develop and share the process and the factors for how CBOs and their respective client needs and benefits Cal will be considered in the decisions that are being made about prioritization. We know there's an enhancements team, but that team is not looking at the current decisions about how changes to benefits Cal are prioritized, and CBOs and assisters and advocates should be better included in those decisions. Thank you for the opportunity to share this feedback, and we look forward to partnering with you to ensure that Benefits Cal can meet the needs of the community and support the work of county eligibility offices. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you structuring it for us like that, and we'll go ahead and respond outside the meeting, but thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, those were some good ones. We've captured them, and we'll go ahead and move into the agenda then. I believe we're going to start off with a few action items for the board office. For the board members. Is that correct, John?
Thanks, Michael. The first one is the standard action item that we've been going through on the pandemic to continue having this meeting under the public health emergency. We know that coming up, the governor will be lifting the state of emergency, but we are still within that threshold for the coming month to be able to seek board approval to continue to operate under the public health emergency for this meeting. So, Michael, this is open for board consideration or action.
I will make a motion. Oh, any public comment on this item or any comments from our board members or our state partners? Okay, hearing no comments, we'll go ahead and I'll make a motion to approve.
Marla seconded. Okay. And Ethan, do you approve?
Approve.
Thank you. Becky?
Yes.
Great. Chris? Chris Wood?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Deborah Martinez, have you joined yet? Gilbert, do you approve?
I approve.
Thank you very much. An, do you approve? Yes. Thank you so much. Roxana, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Cynthia, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Motion passes. Okay. All right. The next item. We have the CalSAWS team been contacted by the State of Florida Access Integrated Eligibility Project. And with Benefits Cal being developed with public funds, it is a code that is shared up between and amongst governments. And we can, they've asked that we transfer the source code of Benefits Cal to Florida Access Integrated Eligibility Project so that they can be using that public funded code to start as a baseline for the use of their future public portal. Our attorneys have worked out a memorandum of understanding for that to be able to protect the Joint Powers Authority, to be able to make sure there's no PII or public information that goes through that, and as intended for the code to be able to be freely transferred and leveraged by other states to be able to do this. So this MOU between the consortium and the Florida Access Integrated Eligibility Project is up for board question or consideration.
So, John, I have a question. So the MOU, is that because there's an ownership so it creates a license agreement as opposed to them just taking it.
No, I think that the MOU is just to say, hey, they want the code. An MOU isn't required. I think it just sort of lays out the terms and protections of the transfer.
Okay.
It isn't absolutely necessary in order to be able to do that. But I know that Florida wanted to do this, and our council thought that it was a good idea to be able to formalize those protections and to make sure that the board was aware of that as we go forward.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And I think this is a really good example of government funding actually benefiting somewhere else. So I'm glad to see this. Any questions from our board members or state partners on this item?
I have a question. This is on.
On?
I'm looking at the MOU and it's a non-financial MOU, so we're just strictly giving them the source code. There's no technical support or anything that's going to come with that, right?
Correct. They are going to, and An's question, if you hadn't heard that, is it's a non-financial MOU, so there's no technical support or anything else that goes with that. That's correct. We are just giving them the source code. Now, they will probably, through procurement, whether they've already secured that or not, be securing their own technical advisors on that, whether that be Deloitte or some other company to be able to do that. And they will be obtaining that and paying for their own technical support to stand that up and use that. Okay. Thanks, An.
Michael, this is Marla. I just
Yes.
wanted to comment here. Just want to comment here for the record and for the public that we are sharing our source code, but no client records at all. There's no private information that's being shared.
Correct, Marla. Thank you for being clear on
Yes.
that.
And the MOU releases any liability if the code, if they do something different with it, it's on them.
Correct.
Good. Okay. Any other questions from our board members or state partners? Any public
This
comment?
is
on
Ryan
this
Gillette
list?
from Department of
Oh,
Social
go ahead, Ryan.
Services. Just curious, is this a common practice? Like, have we done this in other instances, or has anyone helped us with supporting our code?
Brian, this is John. This is a common practice amongst states and projects. We know that the code that has become CalSAWS in its earlier versions have been transferred to the state of Idaho, state of Kansas,
Yeah.
state of Ohio. This is a common practice for states to leverage systems that are already operational and successful in order to kickstart their projects, in order to also then customize from an already stable base of code.
Got it. Very helpful. Thank you.
And John, I think if I remember right, it's actually a requirement from the federal government for funding that they not have to pay to build it up from the ground up if it's already been built to a certain extent.
Yeah, and these are my own terms, so don't take it literal. It's sort of like open source within government.
Right.
So it is an open source for all of public, but it is between government entities to be able to use public funds for public good, to be able to assist, and especially with the amount of federal funding that we have, it is a condition of that federal funding that we do be able to share that if requested to share.
Great. All right. Any public comment before we vote on this? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
Made the motion,
This is Becky, I'll second.
and Becky second. Great. Marla, do you approve?
Yes.
Good. Ethan, do you approve?
Yes.
Very good. Chris, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Gilbert?
Yes.
Good. On made the motion. Roxana?
Yes.
Excellent. Michael?
Yes.
Very good. Cynthia?
Yes.
Very good. That brings us to our consent calendar that I'll go through quickly. We do have a number of action items on our minutes Item 5 will be on the agenda. Action item 8 will be on the agenda. Action item 6 was for Laura Chavez to start to work through to get our ad hoc group started again. Laura, do you have a quick update on that?
John, this is Laura. We've got confirmation from our project team that they will be sending out a series of invites after the Thanksgiving holiday, beginning of December, for a monthly cadence of the ad hoc developer work group. And so this will allow a forum for county ad hoc report developers to be able to come together. We'll facilitate, be able to collect agenda items and allow them to have the ability to work between each other, share information, and also request information from the project. And so we can have that kind of global sharing resume. It was super helpful. We had that back in 2021. We kind of pared that down as we moved into migration, but are looking to kickstart that in January.
Thank you, Laura. Then action item number 9, Lisa, are you out there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So action item number 9 was related to the C4 read-only environment. So we did have a discussion last month about this environment. It was scheduled to be decommissioned. Based on the discussion we had at the board meeting, we went back and met with some of our users in the counties to reassess the approach and the decommissioning timeframe. So specifically, when a CIT had gone out stating that the environment would be decommissioned at the end of October, there was an interim process that would require a submission of a ticket to get an ad hoc. And I know that there were some concerns raised by several board members around the timeliness of that. So we took that back to the work group. We went through the alternative options, and ultimately where we have ended up is at this place where the read-only environment is continuing to be available for those counties and those subset of users who are using it, specific to pull certain information related to C4 Yourself legacy portal e-applications. That environment will stay in place at this point until we implement online pages for those authorized county users to access those legacy e-applications. We're currently in on that item. The CIT mentioned that it was targeted for deployment in March of next year. We are actively looking to accelerate that timeframe and that delivery of those pages. In December, we'll have more information about a new timeline there that will bring it in earlier than March. It's actively, as I mentioned, we have started development on that, and our intent is that as soon as we get some working pages, we will go back with this small user group that we're working with to re-review what is being developed to confirm that it is meeting the expectations and the requirements that we gathered last month, and then we can formally re-look at the new decommissioning date. So that is the quick update there for you, for everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Next item on the consent calendar is approval of Gainwell contract amendment number 2. This is specific to the services that they do for CalWIN, the additional GAGR noticing solution and read-only solution for CalWIN. This sort of lines up their contract term dates with the migration dates. It extends it from February of 2023, which is their term date in the contract without exercising extensions that are available in the contract. What we're doing is we're looking for the board to approve extensions that are available within the contract to October of 2024. So that's 21 months of the additional 24 months. We could also utilize those few months if for some reason something happens, but it does do that extension on that. This did go through state and federal review just to be able to align up those items. This has been accounted for within the CalWIN budget that's already approved. So it lines up those services accordingly from the CalWIN budget and contracts that are now under the authority of the JPA board with the migration schedule. The next item is Emphasis, who is the quality assurance vendor for the CalWIN system. It does the same thing. It extends the quality services through October of 23 with an optional 2 months through transition period of December of 2023. And it includes up to 13 months of the remaining 3 years that are on that contract. So we're exercising those to line up contract term dates. This also has gone through state and federal review and is accounted for within the CalWIN budget. The next item on the consent calendar is Accenture change notice 22, and it adds a number of premise items from pre-populated Medi-Cal redetermination forms, additional 6 languages, earned income disregard, transitional nutrition certification hold, automated, resume the pre-pandemic Medi-Cal operations, PHE additional contact attempt, and goes through and adds a number of items that have been approved through premise items and is supplementing the budget. The change notice also goes into and adds additional county purchases that have been authorized by the county, their fiscal officers through county purchases. Kern County had a damaged kiosk they needed replaced. Santa Clara County needed some ancillary system support as they gone forward. San Mateo, Highland document export from their legacy system, and Trinity County changed their network model to go from a managed to a point of presence model. So all of this is accounted for in the 22-23 CalSAWS budget and updates that budget as we go forward. And then consent item E is approval of ClearBest change notice for work order 22, which is additional quality assurance services for transitional nutrition benefits recertification hold, provides testing and QA services throughout the system development lifecycle, and that also is accounted for within the budget. So those are a high-level overview of the items on the consent calendar for board consideration or question.
I want to open this up to the board members and our state partners for any questions you have on any of these items that John just highlighted and summarized.
Michael, this is Becky. I have a couple of quick questions, and I'm sure that they're pretty clear, but I just want to confirm. As to Gainwell, you said that the underspend are already budgeted in our current year of 22-23, but the contract is carrying forward into October. I just wanted to find out, are those 4 months budgeted into the next year's contract or fiscal year already, or is it expected to be a carry forward of unexpended funds?
It's already budgeted for and approved as we've went through state and federal approval that budget will be secured. That budget is secured and has been approved by our funding partners.
And then the other question I have is, as to the change orders, we're on the 6th change order. It was a $4 million contract, and from what I've got, I believe we've pretty much utilized that full $4 million. So I just have concerns going forward on the ClearBest.
Yes. Holly, do you want to jump in on this? And that is sort of draining that change bucket that we have for them and the replenish of the QA services. Holly, can you hop in on that?
You bet. We are working on an additional change order that will be sent through state and federal review and approval to replenish that change bucket. So that is in process right now, because we recognized just a few months ago that we were trending down on that.
Thanks, Becky, for that question.
Any other questions on these items? Okay, hearing no questions from our remaining questions from our board members or state partners. Any public comment on any of the consent items? Okay, then we'll put this up for a vote. Do I have a motion to approve? The whole slate.
Thank
Is
you.
that on?
Yep,
This is Gilbert. I can second.
Gilbert. All
Hi,
right,
and this
Marla, do
is
you-
Sayori. I'm on. I apologize.
Thank you, Sayori. Since you're on, do you approve the consent calendar?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Marla? Yes. And where I'm at on this, Ethan, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Becky?
Yes.
Great. Chris?
Yes.
Thank you. And Roxana?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes.
And Cynthia?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks for hanging in on a long action item calendar today. And that brings us to our informational items. And we now have 42 production counties in CalSAWS. And we wanted to play a quick welcome to CalSAWS video that both Tanya from Yolo County, as well as Greg here in the room, our director from Placer County, took part in. And this was developed for the CWDA conference. And we think it provided a really good overview of the amount of work and the preparation that went into readying the counties to go live and the collaboration that brought us to go live on Halloween Day. So please play the video.
For your home is ready and the time is now. You've already had the opportunity to explore your home through participation in user acceptance testing. Benefits Cal. The Benefits Cal portal has been live for 1 year and is effectively serving tens of millions of customers. Let's reflect on all that it took to get here. Working with the Deloitte ISS team, counties have done a lot to prepare. BPR. You've defined your CalSAWS processes and understand how those processes will be used once you make your move. OCM. You understand the major differences between CalWin and CalSAWS and are prepared for the change. Training. You've learned CalSAWS and its core features. You are ready to use the system on day one. Your data is packed and ready to go, so it will be where you need it once you move in. Your implementation checklist is complete to make sure nothing was missed before moving day. Moving day is here. Thank you to Wave 1 for paving the way. CalWin counties are ready to move. One team through the power of 58 is one step closer. CalWin counties, welcome home. I wanted to say how grateful we are to Placer and Yolo counties for pioneering the transition from CalWin to CalSAWS. Your efforts have been truly remarkable, and you are setting the bar for the rest of our CalWin counties. As you close this important chapter as part of the CalWin family and begin our county's transition to CalSAWS, I wanted to be the first to say, welcome home.
Placer and Yolo counties, wow. After almost 2 years of preparation, you are now ready to move. The CalWin county's transition to CalSAWS represents the final momentous phase of our statewide adoption and journey to CalSAWS. It really represents the power of 58, our 58 counties. We couldn't be happier for you to join our existing 40 CalSAWS counties and pave the way for the remaining 16 CalWin counties over the course of the next year. So on behalf of the CalSAWS JPA board, our project steering committee, and our entire project, welcome home. Welcome to your new system, Placer and Yolo counties. Welcome home. Placer County has worked hard to prepare for the move to CalSAWS. I want to thank our entire Placer County CalSAWS team, including all of our leads and our incredible staff, for their steadfast, tireless efforts to get us to this point. We could not be more excited to move into our new CalSAS home, join our fellow California counties, and demonstrate the power of the PA.
It's moving time in Yolo County, and we are ready. It's been an incredible journey and has taken a lot of hard work to get us here, but we could not be more excited. Thank you to our incredible Yolo County CalSAS team for your diligence and dedication to bring us to this important milestone, and everything you have done to prepare our county for this big day. We are ready to move in, and we are thrilled to be a part of the CalSAS family. We say yes to the address.
We wanted to kick off with that video that was done prior to cutover. A lot of hard work went into preparing the counties. The counties did a ton of work, but that was before the actual cutover, and there's been now coming up on 3 weeks, and we wanted to hear from Greg and Tanya on what's went well, where are they at, and just hear from our two directors. So Greg, if you don't mind, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, certainly. I've spoken a few times, and really to anyone who will listen at this point on what Placer's experience has been, and I do have to say, here at the end of the third week, it remains as it was to begin with. It's been a very good experience thus far. Not without some what would have been expected bumps and divots in the road, but again, very much expected. From the 8 Mile High view, technologically, the cutover went great. It ended early. We had staff ready to do the click-throughs at the wee small hours of the morning. Because everything went so well, they were able to do them on Sunday, and by Sunday evening, we knew we were good to go. That was a lot of confidence for us, knowing that going into Monday morning that the system was ready for us. We got there Monday morning, everybody was able to log in. Everything looked great. One of our managers had said, and I've told this story a few times, but it was kind of like Y2K, a lot of build-up and preparation for something that turned out to, not be nearly so dramatic as maybe we once expected. Of course, up until that time, we already had a high level of expectation because of the amount of preparation that everybody had done, both on the project and at the county level. But I think I can say that the cutover experience, it was definitely even better than expected. So thank you very much to the entire CalSAS team that got us there. Thereafter, the post-implementation support that we had both on site and virtual has been tremendous. I've heard so many good things from our staff about their appreciation from staff that we've had available to us. We brought on some of we're still mostly working from home, and we brought a lot of our staff or invited them back to the office because, as you know, that can be oftentimes a better way to really learn. But we had CalSAS staff available to us both virtually and in the office, and they really did get great reviews from our staff for their being able to assist us. So thank you very much to that team that was there for us. It really did help and make our staff feel comfortable. So at this point, they've transitioned very well. The system is very well received. I've heard, it's gotten into it. One of the things I heard day one was something to the extent of, is it this easy? It feels like I must be missing something. And, they had to be reassured that, no, this is the way that it is now. It is going to be easier. And so folks are really looking forward to the efficiencies, you know, the expectations that we have going forward is that this will be an excellent system. And that really feels good after, you know, several years of championing the system and really promoting the change to be proven right. And I think as staff are really getting used to the system, I think we're hearing good things. So that's been a tremendous positive. There certainly hasn't been without those struggles. I know that we have a daily call at 4 o'clock and go over a lot of those ticket items. You know, there were some things that came over from conversion having to do with applications and some of the fixes that went in after that. It's been a learning experience for both of our sides to really be able to remedy some of those. I feel like it's a good thing that we're here to take the first bullet for the subsequent waves and be able to hopefully work through some of those issues, because as the other waves go on, it will really be a benefit to everyone to have gone through and fixed those. You know, what I would say for the counties to come, communication is incredibly important. Listening to one another, listening to CalSAWS listening to the county. The more that you can get done, the earlier on, the better, and the more prepared that everyone will be. It's really important to have the right people in the right places, the folks that can speak up, that can identify, and really let everybody involved know when there is something that's bigger than maybe just initially expected. But again, thank you to everybody that's been involved in this transition. I really am been pleased, and I speak for our management team and all the folks that have been working on it. It's been a good.
Greg, thank you. We definitely appreciate those words, and more importantly, the partnership that we've had with Placer County and the dedication of your team. They have been complete rock stars on this thing. They really have been working hand in hand and have just been great partners on this. Tanya, how about from YOLO's perspective? Maybe you can share with us.
Yeah, sure. A lot of the same things that Greg experienced, we experienced in YOLO. I think there was a lot of anxiety going into that first day, but overall, I mean, there were just a couple of, glitches and stuff, obviously to be expected. But then once they saw it wasn't like it's not as bad as they thought, it calmed down and they started working through. I hear from staff all the time that they definitely see that the system, this is better than that old system and this is better than that. It's just more of them becoming more comfortable and being able to work through, the screens and the processes a little bit faster. I think that's adding, that's just a little frustration because they just want to get the work done, but they are working through it. And I have to say, I have actually been very proud and of the staff because they just came in with a can-do attitude. And, it might be a little, challenging today, but tomorrow will be better than yesterday, and next week will be better. And that has been their attitude this whole time. And so they're starting to dig in and try more and experiment more to figure things out in the system. And then help each other with what they found and use the resources that have been on site to do that kind of stuff. And so I think overall the experience has been much better than we anticipated for sure. Again, not without its glitches, but you can't expect to go into a major system change like this without some. However, the big thing is that we have the resources to escalate those or get somebody to sit down with them and work through it, which has been like a game changer just to have those partnerships and resources there on site. So overall, I think the experience has been very good. It was scary going off and being one of the first two, but I do have to say I've been very happy and the staff overall have been very pleased with the transition. So I want to thank everybody for all the hard work, because a lot of work went in on the front end before we got to this point to help make that transition smooth.
Tanya, thank you. Your staff has just been phenomenal and working, arm in arm with the project team to get ready during challenging times, during a very heavy workload in both counties, and time when you're recruiting new staff and doing all those things and working with county IT, that both of these two counties have just done a phenomenal job really paving the way for the next 16. And we wanted to hear from both of you first, and I think both of you are being very kind and appropriate, but we know that there have been some bumps and glitches that we expect, that we never thought it would be perfect, and we're trying to jump on those things and communicate clearly and work with your team, and we appreciate their patience, and we also appreciate the diligence in working with us through those items, because those things are just going to help us get better and better as we scale up to our Wave 2 counties, 2 through 6 counties as we go forward. So thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank your teams for that. And we continue to be the other 40 counties and look forward to continuing forward. With that, I think I was going to turn it over to Keith to give a little bit of the Go Live update as well.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Tanya. Those are very kind words. But I will tell you this: the cutover was very successful, and is primarily due to a couple of things. We have a migration planning effort where we go through planning all of the activities across the programs, across Gainwell, CalWin, Accenture, the Deloitte teams on Benefits Cal, CalHere's, all projects and teams are involved, and we execute that multiple times so that it is not new to us when we execute during the actual cutover. So I think that was very beneficial that we were able to do that multiple times. The one thing I want to say, just a takeaway from that, what we experienced during the conversion cutover, we saw consistent results across the board. So the teams knew exactly what they were doing. The activities were executing as they had been planned and prepared for. The timelines were around the same time. Clearly, we completed ahead of schedule. That was great. And the testing that we did along the way, we have a lot of checks and balances. We want to make sure that we've received the data as the data is moving from various points across the different environments. We've not left any data behind, and our checks and balances were successful all along the way. And then two other points on just the testing. We've all talked about the out-of-case review and the EDBC match, and we're, striving for 70 to 75%, and we just hit that 70%, and we'd seen that in the last couple of months. This was a new data set, so we never know what we might get with an updated data set, and we hit the 70%. So that still goes back to the testing and doing this on multiple cadences and occurrences. And then last but not least, the county click-through, where we bring the counties in, look at the data, tell us what you're seeing. And, I was happy to hear from everybody. This is a very objective test where, we don't allow our conversion teams to really go in there. We let other teams go in there. We want to hear from them. And so we heard positive things coming out of that. Clearly, there are some questions as they're executing through, but we were able to essentially complete that and get very minimal findings, nothing material, that led us in to our no-go decision-making process. And so clearly coming out of that, we were a go. And so for our Wave 1 counties, we completed about 11 hours ahead of our 84-hour schedule. I want to be careful here for your Wave 2 through Wave 6 counties. We're still executing through those mitigation strategies because the data set is at a minimum 7 times larger. So we will still be executing through those and proving those out, much like I just said. Rinse and repeat. We'll continue to do this, mock cutovers and confirming our timelines respectively. So I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. This was a long time coming for a lot of us on the project. We were elated when we got the green light leading up to the cutover, where the consortium gave us the go to, you can start the cutover activities. I want to tell you personally, everybody on the migration team, the CalSAWS project, CalWin projects, we were elated, to say the least. We've got some pictures that show people looking a little crazy in terms of how happy they were, but we were doing this all for the counties. And so we are happy to put all of your data into a moving truck and get it to your home. And so I want to thank you for that opportunity. I'm going to leave you with one last thing, just from a conversion perspective, as I'm responsible for the conversion team. Clearly, as we hear incidents that your counties are finding, we want to resolve those as quickly as possible. I know at times it doesn't seem like it's as fast as possible, but we're doing everything we can to get those resolved for you, Placer and Yolo. And for the wave 2 through 6 counties, we do two things. One, we fix the problem at hand in production, and we also create another work task for us to make sure that we're fixing it for the wave 2 through 6 counties. So just so you know, we're not just focused in on the problems and fixing it in production, we're also looking and making sure we're updating that for the next waves respectively. So just want to leave you with that. And I think with that, Arnold, if you're in the room, I believe you may be talking about CalSAWS.
Yes, and if we move on to the next slide, we do have one yellow risk that we were tracking for our wave 1 counties. And the reason why we still have this one open is we converted on October 31st. So if you look at the last month end, it really was 30 days on CalWin, one day on CalSAWS. So it's a hybrid reporting month when it comes to looking at the fiscal and state records. So we continue to leave this open because running up to the release, we ran through a very structured series of meetings with Placer and Yolo, going through that balancing process, how to use the reports. After the October run with the 1 day of data, we were gratified to hear that the reports came through and they balanced without having to change numbers for that 1 day. So we're still in monitoring mode on this because we'll have the full month of November, and we'll be there when it comes time to do the full month of reconciliation for the reports for the December timeframe when you're going through that process. So we're leaving that open. We're trending it to green, but we just want you to know that we're still there for you as we still do this, because there's still some areas of the system and functionality that you're running for the first time through the month. And so through the hypercare, we will be there for you. So with that, we turn it back to Michael, I think.
All right, Michael, I think that wraps that up. I don't know, did you have anything, Rachel, that you wanted to add in on that? Okay, Duncan, do you want to add in a few words?
Sure thing, John. Yeah, so just on the post-implementation front, I wanted to acknowledge some of the things that Greg and Tanya shared. So in terms of what we're seeing with post-implementation, I think agree that there was a ton of work that was put in by both of our wave 1 counties leading up to migration, and that led to a smooth transition outside of a couple things that we're actively managing. One related to just making sure that counties understand how their issues are being triaged, and that I think there's some slight tightening that we can do on making sure the flow of information from the county to the project and back is happening as smoothly as possible, and that we get things we get updates timely to the counties, because they're, to Keith's point, the work is happening. It's just a matter of some things that we can do pre-migration to make that better and make sure counties know what their expectation is appropriately set as issues are encountered and triaged. But I think in terms of just general business operations, intake and ongoing functions are happening as we would expect them to. Benefits are getting out the door. Staff are able to use the system effectively. The things that we're seeing in terms of usage are just what I would call kind of standard learning curve for a migration, and a change of this kind of scale. So overall, thank you to Yolo and Placer for preparing yourselves and working with the collective project team to get to this point and setting a standard, a really high standard for the remaining waves. So yeah, overall, just pleased that the post-implementation period is, going as we hoped and expected, and bearing with us as we help you kind of work through the known issues as we make the transition. So thanks.
Thank you, Duncan. And Michael, we wanted to start out with that as our first informational item. We appreciate both Greg and Tanya for joining us as our directors and giving their perspective. So this is back to you for questions or comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment how excited I am about this, us getting off to such a a good start. A lot of effort's been put in preparing with these counties, and it looks like Greg and Tanya, you guys have really done yeoman's work in bringing your teams to the table as well, which is really going to be needed by every county and every wave. I know it was needed by us in LA County when we had to make the transition. It's going to take more investment than we have funded positions to do just to be successful, but it's showing early success, and that's really good. I will encourage Greg and Tanya, both of you, to try to dig into areas that you may not have looked at yet, because whatever we can uncover in this initial wave pilot, I would call it a pilot wave, we want to uncover and resolve for you. And not only that, make sure that the next waves don't encounter it, or we have a mitigating way to deal with it. So there may be areas that you haven't touched yet, but I continue to encourage you to dig into those and find out if there are some things that are not working that just hasn't bubbled up to your attention. But so far, this has gone very, very well. And it really should, because we've been building on successes, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So I'm very proud of everyone's effort, very proud of the project, and John, your leadership on this, and for us to continue to turn over the rocks and find out what things we don't know that are occurring, and tee them up for lessons learned and mitigation approaches. So any other comments or questions from our board members on this, our first wave in 42 counties live?
Michael, this is Becky. I absolutely would echo your comments, and also I certainly want to thank the project for their diligence in ensuring that not only was it a smooth transition for Yolo and Placer, but also that the system continued for those that are already in the system and working every day in it without any hiccups, any bumps, or anything that could have crashed. As someone who's in there, and I certainly welcome Yolo and Placer to the platform. I think it's fantastic. I also, really appreciate the amount of prep work that you and your team did in making sure that their transition was smooth. I certainly encourage, as Michael did, the other counties to make sure you do your prep work, make sure that you're getting all of the data ready to be transferred. It's super key in this transition, and any best practices that you can share with other counties, I know is greatly appreciated, as we all have as we've gone through this. But really and truly, the project and the work that you've done has been phenomenal, and I look forward to your continued efforts as we all move forward to all 58 of us in less than a year being live.
Yeah, and Becky, thank you very much for pointing out, for those of us that are running on the system now, we are all still, just as nervous as counties that are converting, to make sure that the system continues to operate. And thanks to our vendors and the project for making sure that the bumps have been small. Thank you. Other directors, board members, or state partners, comments or questions?
This is Steve Zaretsky from OSI. I just want to say congratulations to the counties and acknowledge all the hard work from the project team, as well as the counties, in getting this done. Job well done.
I see a comment by Sayori in the chat about how some of the evaluation is being captured. John, is that something you could speak to?
Yeah, Michael, we are actually doing formal retrospectives on Wave 1. There are already lessons learned that are being applied. Also, lessons learned that was from the C4 cutover to CalSAWS that was applied that helped add to the success of the Wave 1 cutover. So there are documents being gathered. Our QA vendor is going to be leading that, is working with all the teams who are already gathering that, so that we apply that. So yes, and we will be coming back to the board and our project steering committee to be able to share the highlights of those retrospectives and what we're doing going forward, and it'll be incorporated into all of the teams as they engage with each one of the waves going forward.
Any other comments or questions from our directorship and state partners? Any public comment? Well, I think that deserves some woo-hoo, but I know we're not in the same room with each other. But a lot of people working really hard on this. I know that's the one thing with virtual, we're missing the woo-hoos here. This definitely deserves a lot of congratulatory sentiments to go around to everyone. And for us just to keep focused and learn through each phase and try to make it better for the next wave and group of counties. Speaking of the next wave, I think that's, oh, did I get out of order? There's a fiscal update in between them.
Yeah, we're gonna throw right in the middle of that before we go to wave 2, that all important thing about money and funding and where we're at. So Holly gets to do the quarterly fiscal update.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And yes, congratulations, Placer, YOLO, everybody. That was such an exciting time. But turning to our financial matters, our first slide here is just our reminder slide, so we can jump to the first dashboard on the next page. So standard view here, it does include the allocation. It's based on allocations for the state fiscal year. We did do an update to the allocations since we last met in August, primarily in the county support staff category. And I'm going to go over that in just a little bit more detail in just a moment. But so from the overall perspective today here, you'll see our actuals. We actually included our advance request for December. So we count that as actuals since we know what's coming. And so it's pretty solid at this point. So we include those through December, but county claims are through September. So overall, we're at 34% expended today. That's pretty much on track. We are expecting to fully utilize our funding. There's one exception we've been tracking, of course, related to ARPA funding. And that was, and I reported on this the last time, I believe, that was tied to federal fiscal year 2022 that concluded at the end of September. So we have a new, we're working through another funding request tied to ARPA for the current federal fiscal year, which is aligned to this state fiscal year.
Yeah,
so
Holly,
that was added.
I was going to ask you if we were really able to maximize our use of ARPA in every way possible in the project, just because funding is always short for what we need.
Yeah, so we did. Some of that was mostly due to the work that was pushed out into the next federal fiscal year. So work continues, but there's pretty strict deadlines, of course, at the end of everything had to be completed and paid by the end of September, but the work was still continuing on. And so we expect that to be covered in this new federal fiscal year. Otherwise, we are expecting to fully utilize the funding. Also, just one reminder here too, our premise category does include CalWIN. We do combined APDs now, so we group that all together. With that, on our next slide, I want to drill down a little bit into the new dashboard. This is how I translated the action item from when we last met, and you had asked for more insight into the county support staff. This is a roll-up of the manual conversion, the planning and prep, and the ancillary funding. Those sublines are rolled up into a total here, but you can see the breakdown by county. Overall, it's at 17%, but note different counties have different pre and post go live plans for utilization of that funding. So that's not necessarily unusual. The results, the totals here do reflect the allocations that were just recently updated and approved that are based on the results of, it was CRFI 22075. That was the CRFI that we sent out to the counties to provide that opportunity for counties to request updates to the county support staff funding. That, and again, manual conversion, ancillary, and we did open up that planning and preparation category. So this reflects the results of that. You might notice we do have a little bit of unallocated. We had allocated the reserve that we had previously held on to. Last minute CRFI response ended up putting some money back in the reserve, but we will be planning to allocate that out as we progress throughout the year. We had 2 counties that requested additional funds we were not able to fully support with this round, but again, we'll continue to monitor. We'll check back with the counties to see if we can shuffle between the counties and further support those 2 counties who requested additional funds. With that, I think that should address the action item that was mentioned earlier. On the next slide, this is our consortium personnel details. So on track, we did update the FTE count table at the bottom of this slide. This year, the counts are based on, we had new positions that were added, approved funding for this year. But we did also offset with some positions that we were previously counting, but don't actually start till later. So we did a little cleanup there. With our next slide, this shows our allocations for the system changes or maintenance enhancements, aka M&E. We are trending low for CalWIN. That is not unexpected in our CalHERS category. I know years past, we tend to see the savings in that category, but we're continuing to monitor it at this point. And then here you'll also see the ARPA funding savings that I mentioned earlier. To further explore this a little bit more, we can take a look at the hours on the next page. So in here, detailed hours do lag behind because our advance request is high level. We get the details in the subsequent month, and we go through a reconciliation and validation process. So for CalWIN, you're going to see here, we're trending low. As counties are migrating to CalSTAS, fewer changes were expected, but we had requested, and it was approved in our funding, that the 8,000 hours a month continue at the same rate. So that was all approved as part of our OAPDU. And we did that to be able to support the CalWIN side of the migration efforts. So we do have a projection built in here to for some post-implementation support from Gainwell, as well as some support for refactoring of CalWIN reports. And that's built into the projections. For CalSTAS, we are trending high here. We do fully expect to utilize those hours. Benefits Cal, we've been trending a little bit on the lower side, but again, expect that to pick up. And the details associated with this information, don't forget, are included in an attachment to the board package. For the next page, we'll go into the contract obligations. And again, another reminder, we do have a lag time between the time the performance month is assessed and with the analysis of our service level agreements and determination of any liquidated damages or credits. So we are monitoring a couple of those recent outages tied to AWS that were occurred. So that process will be forthcoming. We are expecting credits there. The bottom part of the page is where that's part of our CalWIN contract. We have hours and credits within that contract. We're continuing to monitor that. No significant change since we last met. For the next page, this is our status of the approved change notices and work orders to date through today's meeting. As I mentioned earlier with the ClearBest work order, we are working on that change order to replenish the allowance for that contract. And with the other contracts, we also monitor and will go through that same process should we need to. And with that, that takes us to the end of the slides. Michael, I'll turn it back to you.
Holly, I have a couple questions. Since we're going through a transitionary period, I'm just curious, like as each wave goes through for CalWIN and more counties move on to CalSAWS, is it projected in the budget how the county share of the cost on CalSAWS keeps adjusting as more counties come aboard, thus kind of reducing some of our administrative contribution?
So right now, the agreement as part of the cost allocation plan, when we did the original IAPD and it's continued, is that the Cowan counties, no county was ever paying a county share out of CalSAWS and CalWIN at the same time for M&O. So what is happening is CalWIN counties for Placer and Yolo, they will continue to pay a county share out of CalWIN through the end of 2023. They will not pick up the M&O county share for CalSAWS until after that point. That portion of the county share is picked up by the state. So we do a shift in our cost allocation plan so that the only portion that and it's actually 40 counties are paying is the 40 county portion of the county share, if that makes sense.
Okay, and that's kept throughout the fiscal year.
It is maintained throughout the entire fiscal year, and that will continue. So, for example, the C4 counties, former C4 counties, did not pay a county share out of the CalSAWS until after they concluded the county share for the C4 costs. So it's a phased approach, but the next phase we won't see another change until after wave 6.
Okay. So as the actual costs on CalWIN go down, as counties come off of that, is there opportunity for repurposing some of that funding to help the CalWIN counties with the migration to CalSAWS?
Well, we've already accounted for that, and as part of the M&E or their change bucket, we have already accounted for that. We previously planned for that out of the CalWIN APD, that those as changes decrease for the CalWIN system, the support for the CalWIN counties moving over to migration would pick up. And so the cost would actually balance out.
Would they also see that on the M&O side as well? Because wouldn't the cost be going down to maintain CalWIN as well?
It's not, there are some decreases, yes.
Okay. I'm just looking for any help wherever we can get it within the monies that are.
But we had already accounted for that.
Budget.
Yeah, we had already accounted for that. We had to extend the CalWIN APD. I think we first extended it 2 or 3 years ago, actually. And we had already accounted for a ramp down in the APD.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments for Holly on the financial presentation she just gave? Hearing none. Any public comment?
Hold on, Michael. I was slow on the mute button in the room.
Oh, Michael, this is Marla. I have a question.
Marla, go ahead.
Thank you. On slide 21, just more funding for clear events, where does that funding come from?
Yeah, so what we're working on is a change order tied to the contract that creates an allowance in the contract that as we get additional funding through premise, that we can then leverage work orders out of that change allowance. So the funding follows through various premise or future IAPD updates.
So Marla, what happens is when there is a premise item that we need QA services on, that's allocated through the budget process with the state to be able to supplement that, and then it decrements that budget or that bucket that's there. The process to replenish that bucket, if it goes down too low, we'll go through an amendment process to be able to do that. But that money isn't real until it comes through as a premise item or another allocation. That is just a control mechanism that says that's the amount of money that's already went through the budget process.
So any additional funds don't come from the counties, they come from the state?
Yes, correct. And then it's accounted for through that process. And I'll stop there and make sure that Holly can clean that up, because we do have a cost allocation plan that does have some county share, but I'm not sure how it trickles down to that particular line item. Holly?
Yeah, I didn't quite hear the question. Could you repeat it, John?
Yeah, the question is, we're talking about as additional money gets considered through the budget process, and the example was in QA. And we changed the contract because that's just the bucket, but it gets actualized through the legislative process and the budget process to be able to do that. As those things, if they have a county share, how is that county share accounted for in that? And then how is the counties informed so they can go through their budget planning process on that?
Yeah, so what we do, John, is with each premise, there is a corresponding cost allocation plan that gets approved. Premise, on occasion, do have a county share, not very often though. But what we do with our, we do provide projections for the upcoming year to the counties. We provide what we call a county cost workbook. And so your fiscal and contract SMEs who join us for quarterly fiscal calls and things like that, we talk through claim issues, allocation, we give them allocation updates, and we also give them their projections. We send that out via CIT. So you get a projection of what we know is coming up. And so we do that, we update that 2-3 times a year. So it is available to counties to see what we're projecting for the county share.
The county share, from what I'm hearing here, the county share can change during the course of a fiscal year?
Yeah, it isn't.
From year to year.
The question was, the county share can change throughout the fiscal year as things go forward. And I think Marla's passive concern here is, how are we informed of that? And so how are we making sure that we're not blowing our budget as we go forward? So if it is dynamic, how is the through a very rigorous budget process that the counties are subject to, how are they kept informed on that dynamic budget process?
Yeah. So I don't recall a situation where it has increased your county share necessarily. But again, we do inform counties through the county cost workbook that we send out via CIT, and then we review that with your fiscal SMEs.
And if it does go up, we will make sure that we call attention to it during this time, but most of the time it does not go up, that we generously budget that and work within the budget amount.
That's right, John. We tend to start high and then premise items get, shifted out. So, through the fall budget process and the spring budget process. So it tends to actually go down through those processes.
Thank you, Holly.
Okay, any other comments or questions from our board members or our state partners on the fiscal presentation? Okay, any public comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Holly. You always do a wonderful job of making sure we understand where we're positioned, and it mostly looked black. I only saw one red line item. And that was it. We can deal with that. Thank you.
All right, on to wave 2. Catherine?
Perfect.
John?
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to highlight where we are with wave 2, and it's hard to imagine, but we are less than T-4 months away. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this specific slide. This information will be covered on the subsequent slides. So if we can go ahead and move forward with the Wave 2 Readiness Executive Summary. So just to ground everyone, we are first and foremost talking about Contra Costa, Santa Clara, and Tulare counties. Wave 2 go live is in the end of February, and today we wanted to highlight where we are in relative to their readiness status for both the project as well as the counties. Today's report is as of November 4th. I'll go through and highlight some very specific updates that have occurred over the past 2 weeks. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and just start with the top. When we think about, again, the readiness categories, there are 7 different areas. And so today we're going to start with the application readiness. Now you'll see at the very top, there is a CalSAWS release 23.01, which is marked as not started. CalSAWS release 23.01 indicates the 23 is the year and the .01 is the month by which that release is deployed into production. So testing for 23.01 will begin in just a couple of weeks. Going forward, this team can expect to see the results of those testing efforts, where we are, and any critical items that will need to take place as a result of those testing efforts. So at this point, it's not started. Now moving on into the contact center, a couple of key highlights here. The IVR contact flows for all 3 counties have been approved. This also includes the contact center design. So there are 3 separate SCRs, one for each of the design for each of the counties that are currently in review. And at this point in time, we do expect those to be reviewed and approved by the counties by the end of November. One item that we are tracking as a lesson learned, and John mentioned a lot of what we refer to on the project as retrospectives. We are starting to apply some of those lessons learned already into wave 2. And one of those is also really starting to socialize the concept of a model office for contact center. That will begin in early February, but the planning efforts around that, the understanding the model office scripts that will be tested, will also take place over the next month and a half in preparation for contact center model office. The next application readiness area is imaging. This is going to be ongoing. There are 2 core activities for imaging at this point. The county export of legacy imaging, there's a lot of validation activities that are going to continue, as well as the Highland receiving and uploading those images into a production environment. We will see this be pretty constant over the next 6 weeks. And that's just going to be something that the counties can expect as an ongoing activity. For central print, a couple of key highlights. There are configuration meetings, and then there's validation meetings. This is really the back and forth between the central print team and the counties regarding what type of flyers, what type of inserts will need to be for some of those packets that need to be mailed to and from the project in the customers. So those are ongoing and continue to move forward as planned and in and on schedule. Now I'm going to highlight a few things regarding integration, because as you can see, there are 2 core categories, and one of them has that amber color, which is yellow. So for integration, this information specifically aligns to the county progress of their testing of the interfaces. Each of the 3 Wave 2 counties have a different number of interfaces that they are testing, and this is slightly behind schedule. So at the time of this report, Contra Costa has 6 total interfaces, in which 5 have already passed that IPT testing. Tulare has 8 interfaces, of which 3 have passed, and Santa Clara is a little bit behind schedule. They have 10 total. And again, at the time of this reporting, there were 0. Now the teams continue to work forward and to mitigate this. There are no, this is just something that we're watching as we want to continue. And again, this is a point in time, and each week there is more progress made against all of these activities. So for state IPT, we are at about 54%, give or take, by a few percentage points. Again, this remains to be on schedule and moving forward. Conversion also continues to move forward, focusing on the golden data set that is needed for CDV. And again, CDV was completed last month, and the team continues to work on some of those defects that were identified in the prior releases as well. For technical, a couple of key things, again, from a county network connectivity, the project has completed 40 out of 64. They are slightly behind schedule, but again, nothing that the team is not already mitigating in terms of their ongoing work, as well as there were a few things. So one difference between today or this month and last month when we last spoke is that Contra Costa Santa Clara did have their circuit delivered, and it was that virtual activation was completed. So this was a major milestone to mitigate any risks going forward. For performance testing, just one quick update is that batch performance is in progress and is about 20% complete. So that was something, again, that has changed since the last time we met. So we can go ahead and go forward one slide. We're going to now hit on a little bit around the training, organization, and implementation activities. So on behalf of training, their ILT curriculum is complete. It's been reviewed with each of the 3 counties. Wave 2 county setup is also underway. And then the WBTs continue to move forward with the early learning activities already underway. For organizational readiness, just a couple of key things to highlight. One would be process sim and configuration. If you all recall from Wave 1, configuration starts, and then process sim will test a lot of those processes. So Santa Clara and Contra Costa have completed their configuration. Tulare actually wrapped up yesterday, and now process sim will continue forward. So it's one of, once they do configuration, it rolls right into process simulation. For implementation, do you just want to highlight a couple of key activities, and that is around the ad hoc reporting. So one of the things that we did learn from again, another lessons learned from Wave 1 is really working with the counties to identify which reports need to be refactored from a prioritization perspective in advance of their go live. So Contra Costa and Santa Clara are currently working with Gainwell to identify as well as begin to refactor those reports. And if we can go forward one more slide, a little bit more information on this. And again, for Contra Costa, at the time of this report, there were 61 reports. Contra Costa is continuing to work with the project team, and is now hovering around 70, give or take, of those reports that require refactoring. Santa Clara had still remained at that 118 reports. We are tracking with the counties in providing that burn down report, which is the development or the actual completion of that refactoring against the development that's needed. So, and again, this slide just provides a little bit more of that context from a county perspective of where they are against these 7 readiness areas. And again, also their total number of activities that are being tracked on the readiness checklist and which activities have yet to be complete and on the horizon over the next 30 days. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions regarding the Wave 2 readiness.
So Michael,
So Michael, that goes back to you. I think we're wrapped up on this topic.
All right, wave 2 readiness. It looks like we're greens, blues, and just a couple yellows. The interfaces have me concerned, so we really hopefully will be able to resolve those because you can't really do a lot without your interfaces. So that's the one yellow that kind of grabbed me a little bit, and we'll be checking in with you guys as progress is made there. Any other comments or questions on this particular presentation?
I think it's great that there's no red.
Yeah,
Agreed, Marla.
red. But even yellows get my hair standing up a little. It depends. But great presentation. Really appreciate it. Any public comment on that one before we move on? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation. Thank you very much, Ben.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Arnold Malvik with the CalSAWS platform. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking through some of the incidents that occurred during the month, and we've actually generated a view that simplifies what the monthly view of overall system performance was. As we know, coming out of the wave 1, the system has been very performant during the month of November. If we back up 1 month for October, we did have several days where we had some incidents. The first incident was on October 11th. If you recall, at the last JPA meeting, we talked through the issue that we had with the screen-to-screen slowness that occurred for the MQ, or that occurred because of an issue that we had with one of our services, and we were able to resolve it and remove the slowness and have it come back online. On the 17th, there was an issue with our images and our imaging documents and being able to link those to the cases within CalSAWS. It was related to a change that was made and then subsequently backed out to restore the service that we had. On the 17th, we also had a telecom issue to where there was a period of time when telephone calls were unable to be answered by the CalSAWS service desk. On the 27th and the 31st, we had 2 issues that were related and we'll double click into on the upcoming slides. And it had to do with an issue with AWS and the underlying storage which supports the CalSAWS database. One issue occurred on the 27th. It was 11 minutes in duration, to which users were unable to log in and interfaces were unable to exchange data with CalSAWS. The second issue actually happened on October 31st in the evening. So there was no impact during the course of the day. So that was our day 1 of all 42 counties transacting online, and we were able to get through the entire day. The issue actually occurred in the evening. And next slides, we'll double click into that.
Can I ask a question on this real quick? I love this visualization. Thanks, this is really helpful. Have we had other AWS incidents in prior months, or is it just 2 that we've had at this point?
So if you recall in the JPA, we did have the issue with the contact center, and we did the deep dive on that one in the previous month. For this month, these issues were different from that occurred on the contact center with unrelated root causes. So this is the second month.
3 total issues out of AWS.
Correct. So as we go into the details on that, on the AWS incident, just to give a little bit of a timeline on that. So at 9:30 p.m. on Halloween evening, we experienced the issue with our storage layer that basically one of the disk drives became unavailable for the underlying database that supports our CalSAWS data. As a result, the database became unresponsive. And what we saw with that, this was off-prime, so there were very few users going through the online screens, but we were in heavy batch at that point in time because CalSAWS has a series of what we call jobs. They're basically programs that do heavy processing of large groups of data within the application and generate the reports. So when this drive became unavailable, the database was unavailable, and there were about 400 jobs that were running that stopped processing as a result. We engaged with AWS at the time. We also engaged with Oracle, our database vendor, we went through a series of diagnostics, identified the issue, and AWS was able to identify that failed drive and was able to reconnect it, and we were able to bring the database back up again and resume our processing. So the AWS had done that connection at 2:39 in the morning. After the database came up, we went through a series of health checks on it and restarted the CalSAWS application at 3:38 in the morning. And then we were able to continue on with our batch processing. The system was available at 6 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. So the key point on this is all counties were able to be productive during the course of the business day with the caseworkers in the system. The net impact of the issue, we did have a delay in our batch, which delayed completion of some of the processes that did finish up by midday Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, we were back onto schedule with our batch. The reports were updated, the EDR database was updated, and the system remained stable.
But no notifications were delayed to customers. They were not late, and no benefits were late. But we had to run during the processing day out of sequence, but it did not have an end customer impact on that. So I want to make that clear.
That's correct. And print jobs were completed and mail went out on time on that Tuesday as well. So we were able to contain it so that the impact felt by the counties was minimal and the workers were able to continue to be productive on the system. If you recall in that previous calendar, we had an incident on this on October 27th, 4 days prior, that was similar to it. And so with that, we do have members of our AWS team on us that if we go to the next slide, Mark Spitzer, Senior Manager with the AWS government practice, will go through more of the root cause of what happened with that underlying storage, as well as the steps taken to assure us that a reoccurrence will not occur. So we go to the next slide, and I'll hand over to Mark.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Spitzer. I lead the state of California team for Amazon Web Services. So very briefly on the storage outage, RCA and corrective actions, like Arnold stated on the 27th and again on the 31st, connectivity between the main database and storage service saw these disruptions. The first one was about 11 minutes late in the afternoon and it self-healed. On the 31st, it lasted about 5 hours during the night and it was resolved. That one, as Arnold delineated, disrupted batch, which ended up completing outside the target window. The root cause was a software update that when it landed on the storage hosts with a specific network configuration, it negatively affected their ability to communicate with the database server. Let me just see here. So if you can advance to the next slide, that would be wonderful here. We'll go through some of the corrective actions, the things we've done to correct this. So the first thing we did was we paused deployment worldwide of this particular unique software update for network communications, and that got done on November 1st. Then we remediated all the storage infrastructure in the regions that CalSAWS operates in, which are US West 2, which is in the Oregon area, and US East 1, which is back east generally in the Virginia area. We did this to prevent this from happening again. At that point, it was fully remediated on November 6th. That's when we got it fully remediated. We're also continuing to work with the project delivery team to enhance monitoring of storage volumes and working with our support services team to identify and remediate issues faster. And the applicable service credits will be applied to AWS's accounts. Lastly, I want the consortium to know that AWS understands how important it is that this is a successful migration. It's critical to have the stability throughout this process, through each wave and beyond. We have an infrastructure event management process to ensure that the services are scaled and prepared appropriately for each wave and to help our support people be at the ready for each go-live event. Our executive team also is closely involved in supporting the success of this migration for the consortium. We will be working to the very best of our ability to get the outcomes needed here for CalSAWS. And that's about it. Thanks, Ronald. Pass it back to you.
Thank you, Mark. The next incident that I'll talk to occurred
Can I
on
ask
November.
just because there's a lot of meat to these, I just want to ask Mark a question about the monitoring. So what kind of changes or enhancements is Amazon bringing to the table on monitoring? Because when you push something out, you push out a software update, how do you know that you're not going to have this kind of impact on the clients? You don't want the clients telling you that it happened. So what's the monitoring that Amazon's going to do so that they're aware of this sooner?
Right. So I don't know that I can answer that with a responsible level of detail, but I do want to tell you what I do know, and that updates of software are happening on a continuous basis throughout all of our regions globally all the time. The storage team that was responsible for this particular storage service has dived deeply into this and identified the root cause of this particular defect that was causing a disconnect when under certain conditions, right? So they were going through a remediation process on the particulars, but I would have to get back to you, Michael, on the specifics.
Yeah, you could, yeah, Mark, you don't have to answer it here on this call, but you could have your team provide that to John. John can update me later. I just want to make sure that we know what we're getting in this enhanced monitoring, because there's a monitoring piece. There's also, the remediation of the actual defect and how do you keep the defects from coming in. But then it's how early in the process can you guys be aware to then take quick mitigation actions? Because you saw 5 hours. That's if that would have happened during our workday, it would be a different kind of impact.
And Michael, we are working with AWS on, there's some monitoring that's in place today that we can subscribe to, as well as there are enhancements that are coming down the path that will allow for more proactive notification. As we saw something happening quicker. There are ways that AWS is looking to push those alerts to us. And so that's part of the action items that we found or that we've identified as we work forward together with the AWS partners on this.
Michael, this is Marla. I'm wondering if I can add a couple things here.
I couldn't quite
Michael,
make.
you're on mute.
Yeah, my lips are just moving. I just wanted to say, yeah, Arnold, I would appreciate it if that could be followed up on, because we've had a dialogue on this before, not this specific, but just on what we subscribe to, how we get that, and whether or not that's meeting the need to prevent these kind of impacts. Especially, like I said, if it would have happened during a work day, it would have had a whole different kind of public impact. So we can go ahead and move on in the slide deck. I just want to see that gets driven through so that we're not having.
Michael, Marla had a quick comment as well in the room.
Thank you, John. Hi, Mark. I'm Marla Stewart. I'm the Director of Human Services in Contra Costa County. And I'm not near as experienced or knowledgeable as Michael, more of a layperson here, but I am concerned. I need to let you know that I am concerned that we've had 2 months now where we've had AWS failures. And I appreciate that you've conducted root cause analyses for each of these and solved them, but I'm concerned about future failures that are different, right? We can't have failures once a month. And I appreciate that you commented that, you're really committed to helping us get through our migration. But this is really about ongoing stability into the future. It's not just about the migrations, it's about the ongoing stability. And I guess what I want you to know is we serve the most vulnerable people in our state. And the services that we provide and the benefits that we provide are life important for them. People are homeless if they can't get benefits from us. And the number of people that we have working and the amount of time that, is spent working, like Michael said, if we have an outage during the day, it's a huge, huge negative impact. And so I just want to share these words with you to let you know how serious I think this is. And I'm frankly just kind of disappointed at this point with AWS.
Thank you, Marla. I appreciate your commentary on that. And I just want Arnold, I want Mark to know that we're invested with our our vendors and our support partners. And we need to, we know you said you're committed, but we need to make sure that you guys give us some information on what's going to change. And I don't want to find out later on that we could have subscribed to something and we chose not to. This should be a collective look at this and make sure that we're not missing something because it was not checked on some kind of checklist for your guys' services.
Right, and Michael, I can tell you from that perspective, there are future services coming online that will be able to be that subscription based. So from this incident perspective, we did look at the monitoring that was available to us when the incident was occurring. So that is active with CalSAWS today.
Okay, all right, I'll follow up on the details so that we can keep the meeting moving along. But yeah, it was a rough October.
Can I just ask one other thing, Michael? Thank you, sorry.
Yes.
This is Becky. So I would echo their comments. I mean, our clients, I know that you understand that our clients are our major concern. I mean, our staffing is a piece of that as well. But the other question that I have for you is, are there things that you can do when this situation does occur to shorten that gap of time?
Yes.
Trying to figure out if you guys are looking at that and trying to prevent. I mean, obviously we would hopefully not have it ever happen, but in a perfect world, we know that we do not live.
Yeah.
So I'd also like to hear what kind of things you're looking at that you can do to make sure you shorten that gap. I mean, 6 hours on the 31st, I know we're getting to that one, I apologize, but just the timelines and looking at how long the system's offline are pretty significant impacts given our short staffing and the impacts to that. I recognize it was the middle of the night for the second one, so it didn't, but there's all of those things that I would like to hear what you're doing so that as we move forward, if this occurs, not only are you looking at how you can mitigate and keep it from happening, but should it happen, how you will shorten that gap of time.
Yes, and one of the actions coming out of the root cause analysis for this specific issue is looking at the architecture that's the redundant architecture underneath it, because and for this incident, we actually have 2 databases that are available to us. What happened during this event is, with the nature of the issue, there's a real-time replication that goes on, or near real-time, that occurs between those databases. But because of the nature of this issue, there was a concern that there would be roughly 15 minutes of data loss because of when it hit and the state of the replication between our 2 databases. And with 400 batch jobs running, that 15 minutes represented more risk and could have introduced a source of anomalies in the data that would have created different behavior than what was expected. And so that is why we made the decision during the course, as we were working with AWS, to recover the database and that core, since we had suspected there was an issue in that potential of that data loss. And so that's when we added the time to that outage window in the middle of the night to protect the data so that we had consistent database. The thing that we are doing is looking at that architecture around that copying of the data between the 2 and the ability to fail over and bring up the system sooner on that other database rather than waiting for the original one to come back online.
And one of the reasons we waited, and many people were up in the middle of the night having these risk discussions, is that would have been day 2 of 42 counties live, and the data anomalies, looking at that, especially in Placer and Yolo County, would have been a challenge, let alone the 42 counties at that point in time. So we're happy that we didn't have, this incident didn't introduce any data anomalies by having a gap in that, and that we were able to do a recovery in the middle of the night that it didn't adversely impact the counties or the benefits, but it was a tense evening with 42 county batch to be able to do that and remediate that. So it is imperative. We are working through that and in almost daily calls with AWS and their technical engineers to make sure that we can become more resilient, because as we come to 58 counties, these continued outages, as you guys have more eloquently said, are not acceptable. And the clients and your staff cannot sustain that with the pressures that are on them to be able to serve the public.
Yeah, you're
And Mark,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right, John, and I'm glad you're emphasizing that. And Arnold, I'm glad to hear that you're looking at the redundancy, because that's stuff that we pay for and put in, and when it doesn't work and leaves a 10-minute gap, you guys made the right call on that. But that means that really isn't effective for us. So we need to make sure that the redundancy and the things you guys have built in really does work when the time comes to use it. I think you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay. The last instance that I'll walk through was imaging process delay. And so what we noticed is on November 1st, that was the Tuesday at 11:30 a.m., through our monitoring, we saw queuing of transactions occurring within a specific area of the imaging system. The system was still processing the images, but due to a defect in the configuration, some of the transactions were being resubmitted multiple times, so it had a multiplying effect, which caused that queuing. What the end users, there was no duplication of data. So all the images, all the data was intact during the time. What we saw was that there was new images that had been submitted. It were taking longer to get through the process to get linked to generate tasks. And so when we saw it in the monitoring, we raised it to Highland, who was the imaging software vendor. They were able to identify where the issue was, and they were able to correct that, and we were able to work through the backlog cleared by 8:45 in that evening. So overall root cause of that was a configuration issue that basically came to light during that process, as well as the fact that we did have plaster and yellow. It added about 10% of the volume to the system. We had gone through a performance test of this system prior to the Los Angeles go live, where our volumes were significantly higher than what we encountered on November 1st. So from a scaling perspective, the issue really wasn't associated with bringing YOLO and plaster on. It's more on the configuration side. So we're working with Highland around how that configuration came into being, how long it was in place, as well as a precautionary measure prior to wave 2, we're going to be moving up a performance test that was originally scheduled for April into the January timeframe so that we can re-performance the test. It'll be roughly a year since we did, or the system, it'll be roughly a year since we did the last one. So with the mitigation, that configuration issue has been resolved. We are not seeing reoccurrence of the multiple transactions being submitted, and the system has been stable. So with that, Michael, happy to answer any other questions. Those are the key items to walk through.
Yeah, Arnold, this is one I've mentioned before, that we really put a lot of work into the performance side to get LA launched. And I don't want to see these things start to crop up again in the middle of rollout. So whatever you guys can do to replicate performance testing in a way that would trigger these elements in the Highland platform, I mean, we got to stress test it, do whatever possible so that we don't end up encountering this stuff going forward.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions from our board members or our state partners on these incident updates? Any public comment? Okay, thank you, Arnold. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
All right, it's myself with Rachel and Wendy, and we're going to provide a highlight of waves 2 through 6 and our risks associated with those waves as we look forward. So I'll start this off with risk 258, which is the Calwin conversion cutover window is at risk at completing past the 84-hour cutover window. With that, there's been a significant amount of work. As we know, on wave 1, we completed 11 hours ahead of that 84-hour window. Well, as we look at waves 2 through 6, with the extra volumes there, it's up to 7 times more data that's coming through on waves 2 through 6. So that's going to exceed that 11-hour window, and that caused us to create basically 2 different cutover events for each of those subsequent waves. The first event will be much like we saw over the weekend of the 31st, in which we'll bring over the active cases and any cases that were closed within the last 2 years. Because if you take a look at the statistics, those are the cases that are subject to be reopened or reworked. Then in the third or second cutover event, that we call it our C window, we'll be bringing over the rest of the closed cases that fall within the data retention policy. And so that'll be approximately 2 weeks after the primary event. We're currently going through testing of that process. We will have mock cutover that will give us official timings on this during the month of December, and we will be able to report out in the January timeframe on the actual timings that we achieved through those. Based upon the testing to date, we are seeing that those changes and breaking it into those 2 events looks positive as far as being able to be within the 84-hour window and then have that secondary event. The same, if we move to the next slide, we're going to be applying the same process to waves 3, 4, 5, and 6. So wave 2 will be the first time we do this on the production cutovers, and then it'll be copied over for the rest of the waves as well.
Those 2.
1 month and there's a release in between.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm just trying to track this in my brain.
No, yeah, no.
Wait a minute.
So from wave 2 to wave 3, we have a month in between, and we're doing a software release in between that to keep up with the policy changes and those items. So that's why when Keith said, you know, rinse and repeat and do those items, that's what we want to be able to get to with that, because there isn't the gap that we have between waves 1 and waves 2 on that. That was built by design to be able to have this lessons learned applied, do these items, apply it to wave 2, and then bring increased stability through that process. So we got to keep an eye on that very closely. It's a tight schedule.
The 1A event for wave 3 is going to be the same weekend that we do the C event for wave 2.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is I'm also thinking the overtime on the weekends and all of that when the system is down, so what kind of a impact to that timeline will we have also? So, okay, thank you.
So we coordinated
And we can take an action item on a projected down schedule, on system availability schedule, looking into the future. So we can take that action item and make sure that we're bringing that back so you guys can start doing some planning for the production counties.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
I think as we get closer to the PHE unwind and it's actually going to happen, it's going to be more important. We'll have way more weekend overtime than we have now.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to 268.
And you have Gilbert with a question.
Oh.
Gilbert, I think your hand's up.
Yeah, and I think I heard Marla comment, or somebody in the room commented to the point that I was going to make, in that as the public health emergency ends, and the work that we're going to have to do to get moving in Medi-Cal work, in redoing, you know, all the Medi-Cal work again. There's just some things that will need to get re-automated, policies that will have to get changed because of the public health emergency rules changes. There's just a lot of things that are happening right at the same time that these waves might be going live. So that's just going to be, I mean, I don't know if we want to classify it as a risk or not, but it's definitely something to be weighed into consideration in regards to how these counties are going to manage a system change, migration, preparation for migration, in addition to all the changes to the public health emergency. And so we got to take that into consideration to be successful as a collective team. We have to take that into consideration. And I don't know if that's given, I don't know if we've had an opportunity to talk about that yet, but we have to talk about that eventually.
And Gilbert, I think the way that we're going to be talking about that is, that's our plan and that's our funding item, and being very transparent about what's going on. That's why as we've gotten into this point, the monitoring that the board's been doing and we've been doing on code quality and release quality has been really important. That says, is this a risk that's too great? Right now, we believe with our code quality and our communication and how we're doing that, it is achievable. We have a software release that's happening over the weekend with all 42 counties, and we have our communication next week with all 42 counties, and monitor the quality of that and the communications associated with that, because Placer and Yola will be adjusting to that as well. And then those concurrent migration conversion activities, how we build that. So I would say that it is a risk. It's a risk that we believe that we've planned for and monitored, but we have to keep that at the forefront of our discussions, especially as Wave 2 goes live and we're preparing for Wave 3, that's where that time is going to be more compressed than we're experiencing right now, and what are contingencies that are available or mitigation steps to be able to continue through this aggressive schedule.
Have the PHE list as a risk?
We have the PHE as a topic today, item 13, that we'll probably get to. It isn't really a CalSAWS risk, but it's an environmental risk. And I think the team has prepared some really good slides that are slightly outdated given the update that we thought we were going to get that we didn't really get from our federal partners this week. But there's some good information that sort of puts that together that will probably be updated at a future meeting.
Okay, I think we can discuss 268, and I believe Wendy, are you?
I'm not sure if Wendy's on.
Wendy's not on today. You have Kristen Pepper from the ClearBest team.
Okay, okay, Kristen.
Thank you, Arnold. So for risk 268, this is our overarching implementation related risk. And we've broken it out into the numbering. So for Wave 2, what I will do is, as you can see, there are a number of items listed here on the right. I'll go through and hit the salient points that had updates since our last reporting period. So for batch performance, we are noting that this one is still tracking to yellow. We are seeing that higher data volumes in waves 2 through 6. The testing for waves 2 with County 45 data started on October 17th. And the tuning of programs is in process. This is planned to end on December 30th of this year. For the image scalability and performance, we are tracking this one as a low risk. Same with county readiness. This risk was updated to a low risk on November 9th of this year on our risk management meeting. For the converted data risk, we've retired this risk. And what we did was we opened a new risk, which was risk 280, which is related to the future waves. And then for the production and CDV defect resolution, this is the new risk 280. This risk tracks the resolution of defects not only from wave 1, with updates to the conversion programs for waves 2 through 6, and resolutions of any new defects, as well as any defects that had not been fixed prior to wave 1 conversion. And then with county image migration readiness, we are tracking this one as a low risk. With the county report refactoring and ancillary system timelines, this one is a medium level risk. Here we're noting that over 100 reports have been identified for refactoring across Wave 2 counties. The team is assessing what is required for go live and will track progress in readiness slides. For the CDGs, we have retired this risk, and our early impact dates for this risk are the end of the year at 12/30/2022, and our trigger date for this risk is on January 23rd of next year. If we go to our next slide for 268 for wave 3, here I'm going to highlight 2 areas. Our batch performance, the 58 county converted data set will be available in January, so that we'll be able to begin testing for waves 3 through 6. And county report refactoring and ancillary system timelines. This one is a medium level risk. We have over 200 reports that have been identified for refactoring across wave 3 counties. Wave 3 ad hoc refactoring begins in November of 2022. And on to our next slide for wave 4. With batch performance here, the testing for wave 4 has not yet started. The county image migration readiness is a medium level risk. San Diego County is currently reviewing its bulk export finish date. The risk is a medium and amber status for that. With county report refactoring and ancillary system timelines, this one is also a medium level risk. We have over 200 reports that have been identified for refactoring across wave 4 counties. The ad hoc refactoring is slated to begin in February for our wave 4 counties. And then for our next slide, 268, 5 and 6, the 2 areas here, again, are batch performance. The testing has not yet started. And county report refactoring for waves 5 and 6 will begin in April and May of 2023. And those are the updates from our team, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Kristen. I'll continue on with risk 276, and this is delivery of wave 6 golden data set number 13. In September 2023 impacts the execution of interface partner testing, process simulation, and county data validation for wave 6 counties. So this has to do with the fact that based on the original schedule, we would have been creating that golden data set just 1 month before the counties went live. We are currently in process of finalizing what the plan looks like to bring the creation of that data set back into the July timeframe. We have 2 scenarios, one using the 58 county data set. We believe that we will not go with that because that 58 county data set will have been created in the December timeframe. And so we are going to be re-executing that process in a newer environment so that when we produce that golden data set in the July timeframe, it'll be more relevant data in that timeframe. So we will be able to, we will trend this down to green when we finalize the plan, which will occur in the next 2 weeks, but we do have a line of sight to do that, or have that golden data set created at T-3 now. We move to the next slide, 278. I'll turn over to Rachel.
And before we get to 278, just one quick update on 262 from last month. You noticed it has dropped off our risk list. We did go back and actually ask the counties in the ways their perspective on 262, which was around the project providing information to the counties around timing and completeness of information. And that's what rolled into work plans and dashboards and checklists. For the wave 3 counties, we did have 2 wave 3 counties that came back and said we would like to retain an amber status. So it will come back for you all to see that Santa Barbara and Orange requested it specifically to make sure that the information that is reflected in the work plan was accurate. And the team has gone through a series of what we call table reads to update the work plan. So when I checked this morning, it is current from current information. It was a little bit dated, so we'll be monitoring that, but that's one that will come back for you all to see in next month's board meeting. On 278, this was being tracked around implementation support, specifically around pre and post. We are keeping this one in an amber status for monitoring for 2 items in particular. The Go Live packet, while it has been developed, there's some opportunity and lessons learned about how the communication goes out to the counties around the adoption of the Go Live packet. We're finding that in some cases, Some counties are using it in certain places a little bit heavier. In some cases, it's not being used quite as much as what it could be. So some of those lessons learned from wave one will get incorporated into the Go Live packet. And then the second item is around the support model and the resources associated with implementation. And that's both for on-site as well as virtual. There are lessons learned definitely coming out of wave one around the structure, how quickly things are actually making it through and getting escalated. So we're going to keep this one in a monitoring status, but the team is working on making updates based off of the feedback from Placer and YOLO to date on that model and structure as we move forward. That's 278.
We can move on to the next slide. 279 is Calhoun counties may not be prepared to reconcile the fiscal and submit the state reports. So as part of the prep and the run-up to the go live, there are a series of meetings that are specifically focused around reporting on the fiscal and state reports. And there is also a meeting with the existing 40 production, now 42 production counties that is occurring, that the new waves will be invited to in addition, so they can get into the cadence and understand the practices of how the other 42 counties are using this. So we will keep this at an amber status as we go through each of the waves in order to monitor progress to make sure that the counties are getting the support they need as they transition from CalWIN to CalSAWS. We can move on to the next slide. Sure.
Is there any reason why counties couldn't be invited now to begin observing?
They are.
All, any county could do it?
Yes, correct. Risk 280 is a new risk that we created, and this is really on a go forward. And there's a couple points here, and just saying unresolved go live dependent defects not resolved prior to the go live. This has to do with both the defects, because if you recall, there were a series of SEB 3 or priority 3, priority 4 defects that we went live with that we had alternate procedures in the go live packet. As we look to wave 2, the team is going to continue to make progress on working those down so that we can decommission those alternate procedures. Those are going out as those defects are getting corrected. That communication is also going out through the enhanced communication for the two new counties, Placer and YOLO, as well as for tracking purposes for our wave 2 and wave 3 counties. In addition, on this, we are going to be adding in the defects that we find after go live as we're doing the research with Placer and YOLO, so that those production defects are being considered and reported upon as well. So we are addressing those and updating the conversion process to reduce or eliminate the occurrence of those in subsequent waves. So we will continue to keep this risk open, and we will have one open for all the waves as we go through dealing with both post-production and any residual defects that are associated with the wave 1.
And this is the thank you Placer and YOLO risk. When we look at the number of P2s that we're working through with them and applying those lessons learned going forward for 2 through 6.
We move on to 264. This has to do with Calhoun counties may not be completing their image migration activities by the designated go live dates. This is trending towards green. We had a yellow risk looking at San Diego based upon the volume and their forecasted throughput. San Diego has worked with their vendor to address those concerns, and they have a plan that'll keep them on schedule. We're trending this to green due to the fact that plan is in process of being implemented, and we will be seeing the first wave of test images being sent over. When we see that occur, a successful transmission and seeing the burn down chart staying on plan to meet the go live date, we'll be able to trend this to green. But we did make significant progress, and thank you to San Diego County in working through that with us. We move on to the next. Risk 269 involves Calhoun counties not having enough time to develop and test and refactor their ad hoc reports. And Kristen did a pretty thorough job of walking through that in the overriding 268 risk, so I won't drain this further, other than saying that for each of the waves, we are having education sessions prior to the waves of the reporting options that are available through CalSOS, through the canned reports, through the analytics dashboards, through the ad hoc and EDR processes. So all the counties are familiar with what is available in the CalSOS universe of reporting, as well as providing specific support around mapping on those targeted reports. So we will continue to provide that support to the existing counties as they work through the remaining refactoring that they're doing, as well as the waves 2 through 6 counties.
And the word of advice here is, if you could look at the group of reports that you want, but more importantly, what do you need for go live, and making that so that we can make sure that whatever support that we're providing through Gainwell and the project and your resources together, working together with the ISS team, is that we are focusing on those most important reports that you're saying, this is a must-have for go live, and we're doing that because I know time keeps ticking and the runway's getting shorter. So any of our future waves, please look and work with your staff to say what are must-haves for go live, so that we're working on your highest possible priorities.
We move on to the next slides. There we go. 237 is a risk that's associated with the scaling of batch for the 58 counties. And so what we've seen is through the performance testing and tuning that we have, we are routinely meeting our batch guide or our batch SLAs with our 42 counties. So as we go through each of these subsequent waves, we are taking or continuing that performance testing for each of those waves, because it does represent additional data load that's coming over from just a number of users, number of cases, and the amount of data. So ahead of the actual go live event, we're doing significant testing and cycles of daily batch, of the payroll, of the month end, so that we can continue that success of meeting our batch SLAs. For wave 2, we had a successful run that had us complete our batch in 9 hours, which is an hour ahead of that. So that is in our test environment. We'll be making the necessary changes prior to wave 2 going live to the production environment to apply those changes to it. We are also looking at 58 county data set being produced in the December-January timeframe that has all wave data in it, and we will be executing batch against that. So that gives us additional time to validate if we have changes, then we can make the changes prior to waves 2 through 6, and really in time so that the system continues to perform throughout the entire wave process, and at the end when we have 58 counties running on it. So these risks will, for wave 2, there's a potential that that'll be trending towards green in the January timeframe when we have final confirmation, because we still have more batch runs to do for month-end processing, for example. But we have a line of sight and believe that we will be good for that. And then we will focus on the subsequent waves as well and continue to report out on a monthly basis to the JPA. If we continue on to the next, and that culminates the risk that we have. So Michael, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, Arnold, thank you very much. There's a lot of material, so I'll open it up to any questions or comments that we have from our directors and our state partners.
I continue to really appreciate the risk management.
Thank you, Marla. Any other comments or questions? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. And for sake of the timeline, we're going to go ahead and postpone items 14 and 15, and those are both related to the innovation part of our the innovation parts of the project, and basically roll those to our December meeting. so we can try to stay on time. So John, I think that brings us then up to the policy updates, right?
Does.
All right, good afternoon again. So I'll be brief. I know we have a couple more topics to get through. So we are on release weekend. So this Sunday, we will be deploying our November release. There's over 50 system change requests. This was reviewed and approved by the counties this past Wednesday afternoon at Greenlight. So we'll be conducting the deployment activities on Sunday. Folks will be invalidating that code deployment in readiness for use by county workers on Monday. In addition, we are in development for our December COLAs. We have the CAPI COLA, we also have SSA. All activities are in development at this point. Earlier this week, we did send out an information transmittal to the production counties related to the CAPI COLA that includes things as what caseloads will be being picked up, when it's going to be run, what processing will be conducted, and then the outputs of that COLA. Similarly, we have a COLA memorandum in draft for the SSA COLA, and that should be getting out in the next week or early after the holiday to inform the counties of that run as well. As it relates to our January release, we are knee-deep in development on that item. That code base gets turned over to our testing teams the first week of December to execute those testing cycles on the system changes that are associated with 2301. And then one last item here, the FPL COLA, we are still in discussion on that date. As you heard just a few minutes ago, we have many activities as we head into the new year. Weekends are blending into weeks, and there doesn't seem to be enough of them. So we're definitely looking at multiple date options as we move forward with the COLAs that we have in the late winter, early spring timeframe. So more to come in future meetings on as those dates get finalized. Obviously, with a COLA as well, we are dependent on when we receive the numbers from the federal entities as well as our state partners. And with that, I think we're going to skip the next slide, and I'm going to hand this over to Ona.
Lisa, just
yes.
one more thing. Just go back for a second to that slide. Just point out the COLAs that are coming up in December are really, really important for our Wave 1 counties, especially with the yellow banner cases, on clearing those specific yellow banner cases so that these items get included within the batch. So we know that there's lots of conversations going on with Placer and YOLO and planning, but that is something that each one of the waves is going to be very focused on. And there was an earlier action item that says, can we focus those yellow banner cases on those specific COLA events? And there has been reports and everything else like that, so the counties can specifically track their progress on that, because it is a challenge if those yellow banners aren't cleared and those aren't caught up, that there will be some manual work on that. So there's work going on with that with Wave 1, but the Waves 2 through 6 need to keep that on your radar.
Thanks, John. Ona, are you out there?
Yep, thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. And I will share some highlights on the major system improvements for the upcoming Beneficial releases. As we look forward for the month of January 2023, as Lisa briefly mentioned, there is a release 2301 is planned on the CalSOS side. Similarly, on the Beneficial side, we are working closely with the CalSOS team for a system improvement called support requests, which is an existing feature or module available for customers today on their dashboard. And with this improvement, there will be 3 main categories added in January for customers. Following that, in spring, a release of information functionality is planned as a system improvement, essentially to help customers not only to protect and manage their privacy better, but also to allow them to work with CBOs in a more engaged manner to manage their benefits. And as you look at the summer, CalWorks time clocks is targeted for the month of June, which allows customers to have visibility on the time left for the 6-month CalWorks time limits and request extension. And with this overview, I will pause here and hand it back to Michael and John for the next agenda item.
Okay, any comments, questions from our board members on the policy updates that were given? Okay, and I do see for public comment, Jen Tracy's hands up.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, owner. I don't see the support service request for homeless assistance on the timeline. Do we know when that functionality will be added? And I'm specifically thinking about this because as the public health emergency may or may not be ending, the moratorium on evictions may be ending, and so that will have an impact on people. And we very much would like to see that homeless services request option be made available to people so that we don't continue to exacerbate the crisis of homelessness in our communities.
Correct, Jennifer. Maybe, I don't know if Joel is on the line. That has been reviewed. A part of the policy team, CDSS, has been reviewing that homeless assistance program in general. And that's why it was not targeted officially for a release yet. And we can get back to you through the email channels or CDSS and the consortium. We can coordinate together to provide a response on that one to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have not heard any reason for why this has been delayed, and it's definitely an area of concern.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm taking a note of that as an action item.
Thank you, Jen. Any other public comment on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the PHE list.
So Michael, as we start this, I want everybody to take a breath. We've been rolling through some things, and we are going to defer items 14 and 15. And I know item 16 I can keep very brief, and I know that Purva does a great job keeping that brief. But we've heard multiple times the lifting of the PHE, and partnering with Teresa at DHCS, Lynn and Lisa have put together some, I think, very valuable slides that were very well received by a project steering committee. Now, with the things that happened this week, they're maybe a little bit out of date, but I think this provides a 58 county view of some really important information. And we have this meeting scheduled to 3:30, so I think we could not slow way down, but slow down a little bit from the last two agenda items, because this is some very valuable information. So Teresa, can I think I'm turning it over to you to get us started, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks so much, John. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Hasbrook, and I am the acting branch chief for the policy development branch within the Department of Healthcare Services. And, you know, just want to echo that SAWS and DHCS have been working very, very closely together as we really plan for the unwinding of the public health public health emergency, sorry. And so, you know, this presentation is really a culmination of that collaborative work. So I'm going to start from the DHCS perspective, just really providing some foundational information that I think will really lend to some of the future slides that the CalSAWS team is going to be discussing. So just to provide some background about the public health emergency, we know that in January of 2020 is when really all of this began. There was a public health emergency declaration by the Health and Human Services Agency, which triggered various different activities nationwide for protections. But what really brought to light the continuous coverage requirement and the mandate to keep people in Medi-Cal actually came out of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act continuous coverage requirement. And that is what actually linked together the public health emergency and continuous coverage. And so that's why you will often hear us talk about we need to continue coverage as long as the federal public health emergency is in place. Currently, we do have an active public health emergency that is expected to go through January 2023. Now, we had expected that this may be the last of the extensions. And in order for us to really confirm that, one thing that CMS committed to all states was to receive a 60-day notice prior to the end of the public health emergency. Given the trajectory of the end of the declaration, DHCS would have needed to receive that 60-day notice by November 11th. That notice was not received. So that tells the department we likely will not be ending the public health emergency in January as expected, and it could go as far as April or even longer, depending how the legislature wants to handle the public health emergency and the continuous coverage requirement. So even though we're sort of waiting on those pieces, we'll go to the next slide. This is really the policy guidance that DHCS has outlined. And like John said, we do have quite a few different visuals here. They are kind of representative of that January date, but truly the guidance is consistent that we're going to be covering. And so this information on those slides can truly be lifted and shifted to any of the time frames. Once DHCS has a better understanding of when the public health emergency might be extended to, we will redo those visual documents so that you all have a very clear picture of when activities should take place. But as far as the resuming of normal business operations, one thing that was really important to DHCS is that we listened to the feedback of our local county eligibility workers, of our statewide automated welfare system representatives, and of our community partners to develop a plan that was both easy and efficient for our eligibility workers when we resume processing, but also was the most beneficial for our beneficiaries as well. And so one of the key decisions that DHCS made and what is outlined in our operational plan is that for most of our Medi-Cal beneficiaries, there will be no redeterminations of their case once the public health emergency ends until that individual's next scheduled annual renewal period. We know that we have an estimated 14 months to unwind the public health emergency, and so connecting activities to the beneficiary's annual renewal date meant that we could do as little touches as possible to return to normal operations. The one kind of exception to that rule is we know that our families are living and breathing families, and there are changes that they are going to report. And so as the unwinding period begins and changes are reported to the county, if there's any changes that are neutral or would cause a negative action, the counties are just going to put those changes to the side. And when the annual renewal is completed, they'll process everything based on the most updated information. The only time they'll really be processing sort of outside of that framework is if a beneficiary reports a change that would lead to some sort of positive action. And so we truly are trying to keep in with this one-touch method as we go through this process. On the next slide, we kind of outline one area where we're going to deviate from that. As many of you know, we have several different programs with DHCS that provide full scope coverage to individuals. It started with SB 78. Yes, SB 78, and then moved into the young adult expansion. And then more recently, we had the older adult expansion. And then coming January 1st, 2024 is going to be the adult expansion, which basically means that anyone, regardless of immigration status, as long as they meet the eligibility criteria for Medi-Cal, will be eligible to full scope Medi-Cal coverage. Because the young adult expansion program does have an age limit on it, meaning that right now, under current policy, when somebody turns 26, they are no longer eligible to full scope coverage. During the public health emergency, of course, we've maintained that full scope coverage, but during the unwinding period, as renewals were conducted, these individuals could flip over to restricted scope coverage. We want to make sure that our beneficiaries have continuity of coverage, and we don't have individuals bouncing back and forth between full scope and restricted scope coverage. And so DHCS did make the decision to deprioritize the annual renewals for the young adult expansion population till when the new program is going to be implemented in January 1st, 2024. And so what that really means in layman's terms is we're taking the annual renewals for anybody that has a young adult expansion individual who would be aging out either during the public health emergency or during the unwinding period, and we're shifting the renewals to any time after January 1st of 2024. This is something that SAWS has worked collaboratively with us on, and so they will be helping us to do this in an automated fashion. We do have a contingency plan just in case anything does fall through the cracks. We know that not everything runs perfect, and so there is tracking and monitoring on DHCS's side. So if we need to step in and help support and post things directly to meds in order to continue coverage, we've got a plan in place to be able to do that. So that is really where DHCS is at in a nutshell, as far as our guidance and those types of things around the public health emergency. I'm now going to turn it over to our CalSAWS partners, who are going to weave in that thread of how migration sort of fits in with what we're doing on the public health emergency front.
Very good. Thank you, Teresa. Again, my name is Lynn Bridwell, and I'm one of the CalSAWS policy and design managers. And along with me, I'll have Lisa Salas. She's going to be my helper and my technical support here. So what you see here is, even though it's not quite as time sensitive as what we started out last week, there's still a lot of valuable information that we have in putting all of this together. And one of the first things here was just a visual so that you can see with a yellow banner case. We've talked about yellow banner cases. We've talked about them as far as being EDBC mismatches, but it's more of bringing to light that we have this migration in effect. We have cases that will have these yellow banners. And oh, by the way, we still have to process our cases, and we have the PHE. And at the time that it gets lifted, then we will have all those unwinding activities that will need to start. So this is, again, a sample of what a worker might see. You get a yellow banner and it identifies the particular programs, and it gives them more insight and more information as far as what is not matching. Counties have been sent communications. We've sent out information for when C4 migrated a little over a year ago now. We've sent out wave 1. They've gotten information, and as things progress, those informations, they get updated with anything else that needs to be, so that they're kept current, and they'll be sent out to the respective waves as we move forward. Okay. And our next one here. So for here, this one provides a high-level approach to begin processing cases that have been on a hold pattern, if you will. It's intended to help with the question of where do we start? This remains true independent of the PHE lift date. So we're looking at this, and Teresa had alluded to it as well, and also with the whole prospect and the notion that we understand the counties, to the extent possible, want to be able to touch their case only one time. So with the migration and having the yellow banners and being able to, and needing to process cases at the time the PHE is lifted, it's how do you start prioritizing when you start looking at? So again, this just gives you a sense of order of that it's at the next renewal, post-migration, or during a reported change, and looking at those changes if it's positive or negative, so that we can still meet the heart and the intent of continuous coverage for our Medi-Cal folks. And of course, doing the timing of the migration, some of the yellow banner cases will be processed outside the PHE unwinding period. And we know that, and there's lots of factors, and we'll play into that. DHCS is well aware of all of those pieces as well. And again, it's all in the interest of preserving the Medi-Cal coverage for our folks. As I move forward in a moment here, coming up with the next series of slides, we've worked with DHCS to come up with some visuals reflecting some of the timelines across all 58 counties, those that are counties that are currently on CalSAWS, and those on the path to migrating. This one is a busy slide. Believe it or not, it's at a high level, but the whole notion of this was to capture in a single place some timelines and to call out the different areas that all of our counties are within, during their processing. We have LA County that is showing there on one of the lines. We have the former C4. We've called out the 6 CalWIN migrating waves, and we're showing, and it shows the order in which and where our counties are processing their cases currently. Across the top, this one is one that we will update once we get a confirmed date. It was intended to capture where we are now in relation to the anticipation that the PHE would be lifting in January. So all of these timelines are based off of that cadence in conjunction or help with DHCS on what might that look like as each county gets ready to start their PHE lift unwinding activities. So that again, across the top, it shows currently, if we're in PHE, you see a lighter shade of blue. This would have been the 12 plus 12 months to allow for unwinding activities to begin processing time frame. And then you've got the checkered flag and then the post PHE unwinding periods. It was just capturing a couple years to give you a visual perspective and where you lie. Below, it was all based off, again, the assumptions of a January date. So the red and gold triangles that you see referenced above, those are the ones that we will be updating as we move forward. We've taken into consideration, and we've got notations there. They're alphabetized bullets there with A, B, C, D, E as related to the COLAs, keeping in mind where those are falling in connection with the waves and the PHE unwinding activities that we're going forward. Again, this is intended to be just a summary that includes all 58. Okay.
Hey, Lynn, just a couple of things if we go back one slide. So it's very dense. So one of the things we talked about was, you know, everyone's in a slightly different place as it comes to their migration journey. So Lynn's going to walk us through some samples of individualized slides, whether that be for LA County, the former C4 counties, and each wave. Just to really illustrate, there may be slightly different activities that are occurring for each of the counties in their respective groupings. Additionally, when it comes to the COLAs, and we've talked about this a little bit before, the timing of the COLAs and working with our partners on how early we can get those values, when can systems run these COLAs as it relates to, you know, the production counties that are already in the system, as well as the migrating counties. That's a key consideration as well. One of the other things that is going to be important, we're socializing these slides with you all, as well as the project steering committee last week, is really socializing them with the Medi-Cal committee. So we have had discussions about the upcoming Medi-Cal committee meeting to start to socialize these slides. We know that many of your staff will have lots of questions. In addition, we'll be preparing material around what are the automation changes that we're looking at to support the PHE lift. We do have a number of system changes in both systems to support the lift. Teresa did mention earlier about protecting the young adult expansion population. Those folks are aging out. So they are system changes that we're actively working on, along with certain reporting changes that our partners have asked for. So we will, this will be I guess a hot topic at pretty much every meeting as we move forward, and we're also looking at, you know, once the lift occurs, how can we collaborate with you know, DHCS across the automated systems with CWDA to provide some support for the counties as you work through this caseload. Again, you know, we're here to try to provide as much information as possible, and as we move forward and get those new dates, we'll start to dig in a little bit more on those automation changes and how when they go in, and how it's going to impact your staff as they start to work this caseload. Thanks, Lynn.
Very good. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate adding the extra insight there, and the updates that we indeed are working on. Many of those changes now, and looking at them, we've have areas that both systems have been able to do some preliminary testing on to try and help, and we've already done some exchanges, including CalHERS, to try and make sure that we're successful once we start the PHE activities as well, and the automation. So here we have LA. LA, of course, is not impacted by the yellow banner cases. However, we know that this is a 58 county impact with the PHE lifting and having to process the Medi-Cal. So this was intended to cover that, yes, while LA is doing all processing in CalSAWS, they too will be having their own planning efforts and looking at when the PHE does get lifted, we have that official date. We have 2 months that in order to get the processes started, and then they start, we'll start processing on a named month. In this example, it would have been actually processing the cases starting in April to determine that they would continue moving forward. So that one too will get adjusted. For the former C4, this one is a call out. Again, they too are fully in CalSAWS. However, many of them still have outstanding yellow banner cases. And it's for good reason. It's not a negative connotation at all for many of these cases. It's in order to prevent applying any negative actions. So as a result of not receiving that 60-day heads up from CMS, excuse me, that the PHE is ending, these yellow banner cases may continue to for a little bit longer yet, depending on the how counties are processing and working their yellow banner caseloads and the reasons that the cases are sitting there with the yellow banner. So once notification has been issued officially, we will again update this and show when the actual official months start and how that timeline plays out and adjust those dates accordingly. It's including all the COLA dates, looking at the renewal periods, looking at the PHE unwinding activities, and then the post-unwinding periods. All right, on wave 1. First, I really want to thank DHCS for the work they did on helping create and putting together these visuals for these timelines and the lanes and breaking it out into the various segments. We couldn't have done it without the joint collaboration on here, but I did want to do a call out. They did a lot of work on helping us visualize and help providing a tool that will help for all of you and your staff as well. So on this one, on the wave 1, it shows and reflects that there was just a very short period of time that they would be processing in CalWIN. So now, of course, now all of theirs will be within the CalSAWS world. And it allowed for the unwinding period to begin, and then also the factor of the yellow banner case processing, that it would be starting very soon. And would have an impact during the whole piece of the PHE unwinding. So this is the one where we looked at and said, looking at those pieces, the lists, for example, of the yellow banner cases have an indicator for the SSA income. So that was in part trying to help for the COLA batch runs that are getting ready to get started, getting prepped for actually processing the renewals and getting as many as possible of the cases in a standing to help with starting that renewal processing in the month of the renewals. Wave 2, similar, and you'll see that as we move forward, these arrows in the swim lanes, they're moving over towards the right to show and reflect that the time periods that have passed on here. This shows the wave 2 on their go live and changing the yellow banner processing. And again, that too will have some impact. If it gets moved to a few months from now, we will be looking at it that it's very possible that depending on the date, many of our wave 2 counties will be looking at initiating. They will have completed their go live, excuse me, and then also starting and initiating their renewal processing, looking at their yellow banner cases. And as we mentioned, and Lisa had suggested as well, is that we're still looking at whatever it is that we can do to help support these counties, trying to make sure that they have the information they need to help them look at their processing, their caseloads, and looking at that and working on where do I start? How do I prioritize the work and move forward? 3s and the following slides, again, they're broken out by the go live dates or the migration waves and showing the reflection of the case processing, in which system these respective counties are processing their cases. And then the former PHE unwinding period, right? Again, these will get all adjusted. And as John had said earlier, and Teresa, if you can visualize it, many of you can do that, and other folks I know understand need it back actually in all of this color and exact dates. It'll just be a shift over by a few months, but we will be updating all of this to give you that more specific information and a little more on the actual specific dates. Wave 4, similar, and we see now that we're getting more and more processing within the CalSAWs in preparation for the PHE unwinding activities. And with wave 5, as we continue with the migrations, we will also start seeing, and the counties will start experiencing, in anticipation that PHE will have been lifted, that counties will be processing some cases in CalWIN, the unwinding, and some will be done in CalSAWs. And this is where we're anticipating the counties will be utilizing the DHCA guidance that, other changes that are reported, if the renewal process can be applied, it would be done at that point. If not, they would hold off. So it's going to be a combination of using the DHCS guidance when PHE activities start, and then looking at, do I process the case because the renewal is right there, or is there a change that's been reported and I need to address it in conjunction with work and resolving the yellow banner cases. And our final one of the wave 6 shows a big majority of the cases for the PHE and the unwinding activities would be processed under CalWIN. So this one again will shift just a little bit. And then like the other ones, everything will shift over to the right, and we'll be looking at the yellow banner cases and combining that with renewal dates and have reported changes come in, and how do you prioritize those. In recognition here, we also had a few case processing situations that can occur. So again, another collaborative effort between us and DHCS was looking at some common situations, if you will, that are likely to occur this time of while we're in the midst of migration activity. So there's like 3 of them that are, what happens if the unwinding renewal is prior to the migration? So this was just to give some high level guidance or a series of steps and examples of what DHCS was looking at and expecting for counties to be able to address their cases. And then there's a couple that are just more general in that, like, for example, processing the PHE unwinding renewal with the yellow banner, that on what DHCS is thinking may occur, and also it helped provide DHCS with a little insight too, as far as what some of the county activities are and what's going to be engaged in that. DHCS has worked well. We've had lots of meetings on that. And of course, there's a county work group that's working on this. And many of you have staff that are serving and working on that work group. And they too have provided these kinds of examples. They've questioned it. So it has been a good exchange of information and a way to help people going, well, what if? And we know that there's going to be situations that we still have to resolve, but this was a good method to say, here's a place to start. We all need that where do I start mode. And the last slide that I have here is, this one actually walks through again, prefacing it with that this was anticipated with the projected January 2023 lift of the PHE. So this one too, we can update and look at it and adjust it accordingly once we get a confirmed date. And DHCS, and Teresa, you can certainly add anything here as well. We knew we wanted to develop these slides as a method so that you could extract them or utilize them and help with your staff and share the information. And so this one was also a key slide in making sure that we had a list of the resources and it was condensed in a single spot. And Teresa, I believe that these are the ones that you also will target for the revisions as necessary once we get a confirmed date.
Yes, in the sense that we won't necessarily need to change the policy. We've been really good about not putting an end date on the policy letters. But what has and will change is our operational plan. And I put that link into the chat. You will see an update of that plan in the near future that will adjust dates to what DHCS anticipates might be the next end date. But we've kept all of our policy letters in a way in which counties can understand and implement the policies without actually tying it directly to a date. So there's not a lot of back and forth as your staff developing their policy guidance.
So Michael, I think that brings it to the end. Thank you, Teresa, Lynn, and Lisa on that. And it's back to you for questions.
Yeah, that was very important and a lot of material. So open this up to our directors and state partners if there's comments, feedback, input, and questions. Gilbert's hands up, so hit Gilbert first.
Thanks, Michael. And I won't speak long because I spoke on it a little earlier in the meeting, but and I appreciate the breakout on the slides. I guess what I'm just going to do is just reiterate. There's so many moving parts here, and it's so critical that the counties, the project, the state all work together so that we're all successful in this effort. As the public health emergency ends, and from what I'm understanding, there are going to be some changes to policy, like some temporary changes to policy while we're doing the lift, and then long-term policy. And so automation will be essential to help with that. And so we got to figure out how we can automate some of those changes while we're in the midst of lifting off of the public health emergency. Additionally, we have staff that have not worked a Medi-Cal application since they've been hired, arguably. And so we're going to have counties that are in the midst of training on how to use a new system, also training how to process Medi-Cal. And then on top of that, we have Cal-AIM, and the counties are in the middle of trying to work with Cal-AIM and some of the first steps in working with some of the probation and sheriff departments and correctional facilities. So it's becoming a perfect storm at the beginning of next year of a lot of things that are happening, a lot of pieces that are coming together, and we got to work together on this. And it's just so important that we think about the timelines, the structures, because we got to get the counties on for success, but we got to keep the counties that are on up and running for success as well, and making sure the automation is functioning as best as possible.
And Gilbert, I just want to say, thank you so much for raising that. And this has been really on the forefront of DHCS's mind as we've been coming through this unwinding. So I want to say, one, we've been really mindful about the policy changes that we've made and the flexibilities we've chosen to apply for, so that one, if there were automation pieces that were required, that we were lockstep with SAWS to the automation to support the policy for the PHE would be in place before the PHE actually lifted. And so I want to, confirm that we have made sure that the policies that we put in place do have the automation to back them up. And then secondly, we've been really mindful about any policy that doesn't have automation is really flexible for the counties to choose to use, and we think it will actually reduce their caseload. And so just want to acknowledge, Gilbert, that this is something that the county level staff have raised as well, and we've tried to be very mindful about how we put that information out. Also, all of the policy guidance that is going to be adjusted or changed so far has been delivered and issued from DHCS. And so we hope that has given counties enough runway to be able to thoughtfully think of their own operational plans and make some modifications to their policies as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this important topic? Any public comment? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward, John.
Yep. This is just a commercial moment that says our membership meeting of all 58 counties is January 26th. It is a 3-hour meeting via Zoom. It will be virtual. We do need quorum of the members of the JPA. That's all 58 and quorum of that. There are going to be a couple of action items, one potential action item. One is the administrative budget of the unfunded costs, the costs that aren't funded through our APD for 23-24, getting those approved so you can get those into your budget cycle. And there's a potential action item on some tweaks to the JPA bylaw, some of them administrative, some of them on representation and things like that. So we'll be circulating and socializing that potential change to see if that does come forward. It would need a vote of the membership and ratification by the board. And then, of course, we're going to be taking that opportunity to look at the retrospectives that came out of Wave 1, where we're at with Waves 2, our risks, our conversion update, our DEI initiatives that we call IDEA on CalSAWS, and then we are also in the midst of a procurement, and by that time we should have bids from potential vendors on the procurement that's on the street. So I think we'll probably talk a little bit about this in the December meeting, but I think that's plenty for now. Back to you, Michael.
All right, great. Any questions or comments on the upcoming membership, general membership meeting in January? Gilbert, you have your hand.
Yeah, just a quick question. John, in regards to any bylaw changes, if the JPA approves the bylaw change, does it have to get ratified by all of our boards of supervisors?
No, what we've looked at is that it would only have to be ratified by the JPA board. They're not changes that would have to go to the 58 county boards of supervisors. Good question. Thank you, Gilbert.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions from our board members, state partners? Okay. Any public comment? All right, I believe that takes us to our last item.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I would just like to echo everyone's sentiments on Wave 1 implementation. We feel the same way. It was very successful. Now IVNV's eyes are on upcoming waves. 84-hour cutover window is one of our top watch items. We are looking forward to Wave 2 mock conversion, as well as I would just like to acknowledge that the project is taking immense measures and great planning initiatives for the retrospectives for Wave 1, making sure the lessons learned are being taken over and applied to future waves. Very happy to be part of those sessions and meetings. We do not have any concerns on any of the items which you're seeing on the screen right now, and we will continue to monitor them. Things are really going well. And I'll close with that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Candia. Any comments or questions on that very rapid update on IVNV from our state partners, our board members? Any public comment? Okay, then that brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you guys all for hanging in here. I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving next week. We've all been working through the pandemic and through the project phases through a number of holidays these last several years. So I'm hoping that you at least find some time to spend with your families and friends this holiday season, even though we are in the middle of rollout. And we will see you again December 16th at 9 a.m. Remember, that's a morning meeting, and I'm flying out to go see my son right after. So we're going to stay on time in December. All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.